Jessica go ahead and get started with her spiel, and hopefully we get some really good um, discussions out of chapter 2 of the new Jim Crow today.
All right, hi everybody. I'm Jessica. Sorry, no camera today. Most of the days, but like I was mentioning earlier, this is definitely kind of going to jump around a lot because a lot of the things in the chapter kind of connected, and I was like, when I was doing the notes stuff, it was going back and forth. So, um, yeah, let's just try to roll with the punches. So, um, first, like my first thing in chapter two was like the first page they were talking about how the she was talking about how shows like Law and Order and I guess other crime shows, probably NYPD Blue or stuff like that, um, aren't aren't a description of reality. And just out of curiosity, because I didn't watch a lot of drug shows, I did watch a lot of crime shows, and I honestly thought that's how the justice system went. So my first question was, before reading this book, would you have considered shows like that, like Law and Order, like Cold Case, like all those others, to like accurate, like to be accurate portrayals? And like, if not, why not?
So do we just hop right in or?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you can go ahead. You're new. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Maybe when I was younger, I would have thought it was like that. But as I got older and started to know people that went through the justice system, it was obvious that the majority don't even go to trial. It's a plea bargain, and that's the majority. So the trials are, I mean, they will do anything they can to steer you away from going to trial. So, yeah, it's like totally just, Hollywood. Totally.
Yeah.
I agree. I always thought it was extremely uh fictionalized as far as people's experiences, because for the reason that um is very biased towards law enforcement, as far as putting them in a really good light, and really just making the criminals seem uh extremely bad. And I remember watching these episodes, and even when they had the wrong person, by the time they figured out that it was the wrong person, they smeared the person so bad that you couldn't even get past it. So I think in that respect, is very much valid to some of the experiences that people go through today, especially with the whole, we don't get the benefit of the doubt. It's pretty much guilty until proven innocent, and not innocent until proven guilty. For the majority of situations when it's dealing with, black people and people of color. So that is the aspect that I think is very real. But I do think all these shows lean towards showing law enforcement in a very favorable light, as far as that goes.
Mm.
Anybody else? Hey, Nandi. I'm sorry. I just saw your camera pop up.
Yeah, I decided not to hide, even though it's been a rough morning day, period, i.e.
Fine. Oh, all right. So I guess we'll move on to the next one. Let me see here. So I did. Okay, so where is that? I forgot our pages are different, but for me, page 60, the non 10-year anniversary edition. So there was that chapter where she's like, it's the statistics where she was saying that drug offenses alone account for 2/3 of the rise in the federal inmate population, and more than half of the rise in the state prisons between 1985 and 2000. Approximately a half million people are in prison or jail for a drug offense. For a drug offense today, compared to
Mm.
an estimated 41,000 in 1980, an increase of 1,100%, which I thought was ridiculous. Um,
lot.
Yeah, like drug arrests have tripled since 1980. As a result, more than 31 million people have been arrested for drug offenses since the drug war began. And she said, to put the matter into perspective, consider this: there are more people in prisons and jails today just for drug offenses than there were incarcerated for all reasons in 1980. Um,
Ooh.
and I honestly thought that was
Wow.
that for me that was mind blowing. It was kind of crazy,
Yeah.
and I automatically thought, like, questions started going through my head, like, oh my gosh, how many innocent people are actually in jail right now? Like, how many people were denied appeals probably because the courts know that they're innocent, but they're purposely like sitting here exploding this war on drugs, and they don't want to release people. They don't want to spend money on retrying people or trying to get them out of jail and stuff. And it tied into something later, but I don't have that pulled up on me exactly. So let me see, page 62. But I thought those numbers and those statistics were staggering. Honestly, I never would have seen that coming. I never would have expected that. And I guess that's just coming from my point of view as well. Like I don't deal with law enforcement, period. So for me, it was staggering. And I was telling my mom, even going back to chapter 1 a little bit, and like it's still mentioned in chapter 2, like where I remember I walked into her room, I was mad because I was like, yeah, Clinton did this and that when he went to that guy's execution, the guy who was mentally incompetent, how I mentioned that in chapter 1. And he was so incompetent, he wanted his dessert saved for the next day after the execution. I almost cried. And I was like, Mom, look at what these politicians are doing. I don't like Clinton anymore. And I was like, right. I was like, yeah, I don't like it. And then I'm starting to read all this stuff. She's like, well, Joe Biden was on the Senate at the time and he approved these things. And I'm reading in chapter 2 where Obama started cracking down on crime too. And so so a question is, do you think that every president or political like administration knew the motivation behind the war on drugs? And if not, like, do you think what president do you think the awareness stopped with?
I don't think that. And for people who have the 10th anniversary edition, those statistics are on page 76. I don't think there's ever been a situation where politicians were not aware of what was going on. Do I think they knew to the effect of how detrimental it has been on one side of the population? I don't think initially when these things were created, they could have foreseen how these numbers would initially increase. But I think they're all fully aware of what's going on.
I think I don't know if I would think that they're completely aware in a sense of like a conspiracy to make a certain outcome happen. I think it more has to do with doing whatever they think is going to get them the most votes and keep them in power. Because with that power comes the money too. And I think that, it doesn't really, I don't think they're really, it matters what happens. I think it's mostly about just staying in power. So if the public, if they're going to have the media and everyone portray everything as we need more, stringent laws, we need longer sentences, that's what they're going to do. They're going to do whatever it takes without any thought of the after effect and if that is actually helping. I think it's all based on just staying in power and doing whatever it takes to stay in power.
Yeah, I think we also have to look at the fact that, when she was quoting these things before, even in chapter 1, these were the federal laws that got put into place. But the ones who decided to do it on their own and take it a step further were the states, with the things that they implemented, because the majority of prisoners are not federal prisoners, they're state prisoners. So that's where the difference comes in as well, where with everything being privatized with the states, and actually having to push for those numbers to stay at a certain level, to ensure that this money keeps circulating, in the prison industrial complex.
Do you think that the attitude towards the drug culture, though, in terms of like what they're looking for, or who they're looking for, is different? Because, growing up and going to high school, like per se, let's say like somewhere like Oakland High, people smoked weed and they drank their 40s, but there wasn't really any other drug culture really too much outside of that at that time. Now, this is, of course, is years ago. And if you smoked even cigarettes, it was kind of like looked down upon, you know what I mean, in the Black community somewhat at our school. Now, like when you fast forward to my daughter going to somewhere like UC Santa Barbara, it's like the drug culture is just like they do whatever they want to do when they party. And I never really heard about any kind of this person got arrested unless they were like, I mean, they would do stuff like get like almost, like pass out, or what's that, alcohol poisoning, drunk out in the streets of Goleta and stuff like that. So in that sense, they might have gotten a fine or something like that. But it was just at the parties, on the videos, doing bumps. I mean, it's just like, there's no, we're going to get our Adderall for the study for this final. And I've got to go get my Valium prescription. Do you need some, what's the ones they do? The Xannies, and so you trying to act like you don't know. And so I do think it was just interesting to me. And I don't know exactly what that is, but it seems like that for a certain group with the money, they use drugs freely.
There you go. Money. No, I'm just saying the money, the police are not going to harass that group of people because, and this is how a lot of society thinks, they might be doing something wrong, but underneath it all, they're good people. Whereas in Oakland, underneath it all, you're not good people. Right. So we're going to harass you at every turn.
Right.
That's how it is. That's what I've seen. But from going from one place to the other, that's what I've seen. They're going to slap you on the wrist out in Santa Barbara, but in Oakland, they're going to take it to the max. And it's that underlying feeling that these people in Oakland are criminals, and the people in Santa Barbara, they're just, they're in college, they're just, making bad choices right now, but they'll get through it and they're going to be good citizens of, in the end. Yeah.
Well, in capitalism, period, and we can discuss that later, but there is this pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. And I get told that by my Republican father quite often with his, didn't have to worry about going to jail so he could go get his PhD. But we have that argument quite often. But this pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you're not doing that, then you're just lazy and you're not a good person. And poor people, there is this view among conservatives in particular, baby boomer conservatives, that the only reason that poor people are poor is because they're not any good. And that is just the reality. And calling it what it is very important. And then on top of that, the other conservative thing is that anyone who wants to bring poor people up and give them any kind of quote unquote advantage, which at this point we'll just say is fair civil rights, jeopardizes their money and power, and therefore is socialism. Socialism is dangerous. Going back to one thing that you guys talked about last week in chapter 1, it was talked about that after Barack Obama, were we living in a post-racial world? And I'll tell you that what happened among a lot of the white conservatives, because at the time I was a part of the Republican Party, I'm not anymore, but I was. And what happened is that we were told that Barack Obama was a socialist and that socialists are dangerous. And so the racism is very covered up by these political views / capitalistic views that say that poor people are dangerous and poor people are lazy and poor people are not worthy of help.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then on top of that, socialism is evil. And it's socialism if we want to help people that are imprisoned or rehabilitate them or give them access to their rights.
Mhm.
That's just a real thing. I'm done.
I think it's very true when she says that, because before it wasn't called referred to as socialism, it was just communism. And we
Right.
have to remember that Martin Luther King wasn't murdered because of the civil rights movement. He was murdered when he started gearing towards the poor people's campaign, with bringing together poor whites and poor blacks to fight against this capitalistic system. That's when he was murdered. It wasn't during, when he was pushing for the civil rights. It was actually when he started to going towards those ideals that they were like, okay, we can't have that. Right? We can't have the poor people rising up.
Right.
They always slide the bar though, because they're giving away free land in Oregon back in the day. That's socialism,
Right.
right? But nobody cared.
Mhm.
And it feels like as soon as maybe, the conservatives lose the majority, they don't want to be democratic anymore.
Mhm.
So why does it only work while you're on top? Like, let us know where it's really at.
Mm.
And we picked ourselves up by our bootstraps before, and then that didn't work.
Yeah.
Right? They just burn it down. So it's like,
Very true. Very true. Very true.
Yes.
it's like, give us the true marker and the true rules that you
I
want
don't
to.
think
Why would they do
I
that
don't think
then?
you're gonna. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get that. I mean, from looking at the video, I just don't.
They don't make money.
From looking at the video from the last chapter you guys discussed, chapter 1, and talking about Obama and everything. For me, I never thought. I was surprised that he got elected. I mean, I voted for him, but I was surprised still, because I thought, to me, in my mind, America was too racist still to vote for a Black president. And so I didn't think, I was happy, but I was surprised. And then I did think, like someone else had said, that they were going to shoot him. I thought he was going to die after that. And then when he didn't, I still didn't think that it was a post-racial, when he got elected, that we were in some new, I just think that it's gotten over many, many years, it's gotten better, but not anywhere near where it should be, even for us to have a Black president. And I knew that it was just, it was all under the surface with him. It was all under the surface. They weren't going to let it out. And then after that, now that Trump is the president, I think that he didn't create more racists. He just let them they're more comfortable now to express themselves. And that's how it's been. And they were always there. And now they're just more emboldened. They're feeling more confident with him as the president.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's gotten worse. I think it was always like that. But I do think that there are younger generations that are coming up that have different views than their parents and their grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it is getting better, but it's moving way, 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 way too slow. So, just having Obama as a president, I mean, it was good. It was a good look for the US. But I'm just saying, we're looked at horribly in other countries.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
We're looked at horribly. And the things that I see on TV, I'm like, oh, not again. Oh, they're just, tearing us up in other countries.
Right.
And so Obama was a good look for the US, but
He
it
was
didn't.
articulate, and he was, he was
Yeah, now we have someone who I swear to God, I got a better education at Oakland High. I can't even believe that. I mean, the way he speaks is not in any way educated or presidential in any way. But you know, it's gotten those people that are like him, just poor, to come out and feel like now they have, you know, somebody that they can, you know, look up to, I guess, and feel confident that they can express themselves. But I don't feel that it helped the country. I mean, I don't feel like having Obama as a president really helped as far as the racists were concerned. I don't
Right.
like it
People,
was
America.
racist.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, he was still following the same program that they were doing. You know what I mean? In terms of
right.
the drones and the killing and the agenda. He didn't buck the agenda. I mean, I don't know. I always thought if he did, they would have killed him immediately.
Oh,
But
definitely.
I
I
mean,
think
but he
you can
didn't
only,
really do any. I felt like he also created a backlash against minorities or blacks in particular, because there was this anger among these deep-seated people who had these older ideals about this could never happen in our country. And so who do
Right.
you take that anger out against? They can't reach Obama. You know,
Right.
he's in the White House, so they're going to take it out on the guy who's playing his music in the car at the station and he won't turn it down. And they just going to shoot him up real quick.
That's what I don't
It's very
understand. It's like Obama seems more conservative than Trump.
Trump, right?
The people who are supporting Trump are nothing like Trump. I mean, he's got evangelicals. Like Trump doesn't, he's not religious. You know what I mean? He's got poor people. He's not poor.
Right.
right.
So people aren't really following the character of the
No,
people.
they're just following the stronghold and to maintain the white supremacy of it. That's
Yeah.
it. That's basically it.
And so when it comes to that too, so it's just like getting to the next few sections, like rules of the game, unreasonable suspicion, and well, kind of just say no right before it. Like I'm seeing here, okay, we've always
Uh-oh.
Just your mic went out.
it.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you now.
Awesome. Sorry. I was saying, yeah, so like, you know, when it comes to the next few sections, like rules of the game and unreasonable suspicion and you know, like right before just say no and stuff. So, you know, we've always been taught that the documents created were the law. They are by the law. And, you know, like follow them to the letter of the law. And so here they are talking about the Fourth Amendment and the rights that we're supposed to have. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast. The rights that we're supposed to have. And then, but it seems like these next few sections, the Supreme Court gets to decide and pick and choose which sections of the Constitution they want to uphold, or they can like, what's the word I'll use? They can kind of, you know, tamper with the meaning of it, decide when it applies, when it doesn't apply, and you know, it's and one of the justices was saying that, you know, when you grant police, because, you know, Fourth Amendment was saying that you, for those, I don't know if everybody has the book, but it says that it's talking about the right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. That they shouldn't be violated and no warrants should be issued unless you have probable cause supported by an oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So that was the Fourth Amendment, and the Supreme Court was said to definitely uphold that before the war on drugs, and they were trying to do that so that it didn't turn into like it was before the American Revolution. Well, you know, when everything went to crap because, you know, English practices of searching and all this stuff like that. But it made me just feel like, well, honestly, throughout the chapter, so the Supreme Court is shutting down. Like every time it comes to a person of color or anything, they shut it down. And I felt like that was, but if it was another case, you know, with a person who wasn't of color, you know, they would say, okay, well, maybe we need to make a little change or something or make an exception. And that was like, to me, it kind of felt like the ultimate white supremacy, and I started to see why it was important, why justices are picked, because they serve a lifetime sentence. And
Which is way too long.
Right.
yeah. And it's crazy important. And I realized, so you tell me all these years, all these white people in power, like, what? That's crazy. Of course the rules are going to be slanted towards what you want and your agenda. But I did have a quick question about page 62, which 16 pages ahead of yours. But it says the routine police harassment, arbitrary searches, and widespread police intimidation of those subject to English rule helped to inspire the American Revolution. So you see how history kind of keeps repeating itself with us back and forth, back and forth. Do you think that this is like a revolutionary time, or it's like one before a revolutionary time?
Hmm.
Like with police reform and stuff like that, I meant.
I guess that's leading in the whole Black Lives Matter.
Well, yeah, well, you
Like,
can.
is that a
Yeah.
revolutionary movement? I'm probably the person who doesn't have the popular opinion about Black Lives Matter because I just hate to even say it.
I do too. So it's not
I'm
really.
just like, can we please elevate the conversation? You know what I mean? Because for me, it's almost like condescending to say it. It's like Black Lives Matter. Okay. I mean, you really want me to like say that and have some kind of, what's the word?
Pride in it.
Pride in it, yeah, or like something I can rally around. I'm supposed to put a sticker on my door that says Black Lives Matter and kind of remind everyone. Is this where we are now in 2020? Like, it just makes me irritated because Black, white, Asian, Latino, having lived in different places all the world, we can all intermix and continue life, which to me is the fundamental sign that we are all one, So to break it down to have me try to champion people to get behind Black Lives Mattering is just like, to me, like almost like belittling my intellect. I'm not going to try to convince you that my life matters. You know what I
No,
mean? Like,
so
because if I
I
have to
think we
do that,
all feel that way. That we like. Why should why should we even have to say that? But the reality is that we do have to say it. Like it. And I understand completely and totally understand what you're saying. But it's like, regardless of that, us continuing to say it, you
do you
still
really
see
think that saying it
people get
reaches
murdered
someone
in.
who doesn't think that? Like, do you really think saying Black Lives Matter reaches people who are anti-Black or who would hurt a Black
No,
person?
no, no, no. And that's what I'm saying. Regardless, that's what I was saying. Regardless of us continuing to say it, we still get mowed down in the street like animals. It's not really changing anything. What people should be focusing on is the policies and
Yeah,
getting these people out of office and not allowing another extreme right wing justice being appointed to furthermore encroach on the Fourth Amendment and other civil rights. I think that's how
right,
people end up getting distracted, is not uh, being strategic about attacking the policies and the white supremacist, institutions, but focusing more on the little things
right.
instead of, the overall. So yeah.
that's true, because I didn't even realize the importance of Amy Coney Barrett, whatever her name is, her role was.
Yeah, and this is the person who said that someone saying, and I'm gonna flat out say it, this is the person who said someone saying nigger doesn't make a workplace a hostile environment. But if someone happens to say that and I lay hands on them, then it would be considered hostile, because nobody's gonna sit there and fly out of their mouths like that while I'm around and think that they're not gonna get cut and think that it's gonna be right.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah,
but this is what this is the reality. This is what we're
Right.
dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. This
Exactly.
is somebody that they're trying to appoint to the Supreme Court. This is real life. So
Right.
yeah.
And honestly, reading this book taught me how important, it's teaching me how important this election is. I'm just sitting here like, wow, I didn't know this. Wow, I didn't know that. So now I'm looking at even what's going on now a little bit differently. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why voting matters. I was just speaking to a friend who normally doesn't vote, but she was like, I don't even know who to vote for. I said, what? And she said, I don't know who to vote for. If Trump give me that stimulus, I'm gonna vote for him. I almost, I almost dropped the phone. I said, girl, do you know? And I started going, I was like, I don't think she really cared though. And I said, it's super important. These policies really do matter. It is disrespectful to try to fill a Supreme Court seat right after one person passes away, I still think. And before a few days before, less than a month before the election, you shouldn't have that right. You should let the American people choose. But I know he doesn't want to do that because last time we chose, he lost like popular vote, but the electoral college voted him in.
Right.
So he knows this is the only way that he can win is if he gets somebody pushed in there before we can vote. And I'm just sitting here like, man, I kind of hope Biden passes the Supreme Court. If he's like, I don't know. I just don't know what this thing is really important though. I'm really glad that we started reading this because I'm like, my eyes are getting open now to a lot of stuff I did not see before.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely.
I'm sad that we rally behind Biden. It's just sad.
What you say?
We gotta do something.
Well, she said we gotta do something.
I know it is.
We do
have to
right?
do something, but that's what's so sad about it. It's like I have to
know,
love Biden.
You don't have to love him, and we don't even have to agree. But damn it, not Trump. Like all day, no, anybody but him. It could be Mickey Mouse. It could be. I'm serious. It could be Mickey Mouse. It could be whoever, but it cannot be him. And going back to what Francesca was saying before about us and how ridiculous we look on the world stage, that is the reason why we need somebody like him in order to get that respect back. Because right now, it's just at an all-time low.
I know.
Yeah,
it's an all-time low.
Yeah, it is an all-time low.
Yeah.
And then that's when you have more problems. Is like before we were respected as being the first and being the world leader, and now it's like everybody's bucking the system because they don't respect the U.S. anymore. Like seriously.
I honestly, and that was in the book too. One of my, like when she was talking about how we have a higher incarceration rate than any other country in the world, I said, and we're supposed to be a leader. We're supposed to be somebody they look up to. We're not even. We're more barbaric than they are at this point.
We have our own human rights issues, and we try to police everybody else. And actually, if you look at the other criminal justice systems and you compare them, theirs is all about rehabilitation and ours isn't, which is why you don't see them giving murderers life sentences or executing them, because they do feel that people can be rehabilitated. And that's just that's not something that we're ever trying to focus on. We want, not we, but they want people to come back, basically. To make it
I think that's the idea though of the society being for everyone and wanting everyone to be. I think because America is this great, I think it could be great in terms of the diversity and the melting pot kind of idea of all these different cultures. And because that does get tiresome when you go to another country and everybody else is the same there. You're like, okay, I like that America is diverse in areas, some more than others. But because we don't still feel that sense, I think, of connection or like seeing this as my brother in a way or my sister in a way of I want you to do well because that means I do well, or I want to learn about your culture. I want to have a sense of community. Everybody in America, it's based on money and these extremes of wealth that are just like, I can't even wrap my mind around like needing that much wealth and power to make me feel okay. Like how much is enough? Where you're willing to sacrifice the planet, people, just, have people working in crazy conditions. And you see versions of it in other countries where they've got, when we were in Turkey, Shigan was saying he liked seeing that the garbage men were Turkish. Right? The Turkish garbage men were coming down the street at night to clean the streets and get the garbage. And, in some countries, they have the
Filipinos
The
or Indians
Filipinos
or
or the
whatever.
Indians doing their cleaning, and they're living together in a poorer area, 10 in a house or
Right.
20 in a room, trying to make enough money to get back to their family and things like that. So it kind of tells you that culture has this superior and this caste kind of idea about we're up here and you're down here, so you can go ahead and clean the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, I like, even with this book club, it seems like I don't think that we're in the midst of a revolutionary time, but I think that we're in an awakening time. I think more and more people are starting to kind of maybe awaken, just like with things like this, and wanting to connect on like that intellectual level of we see some things in society that we don't like. And that's what it's going to take, right? From here on up to get to where we don't have Biden as our only
Choice.
option. Yeah.
Then you
all
could
right.
also look at it as the awakening is the start of the revolution too. You
Mhm.
know,
Right.
so you can look at it a different way. You know,
Mhm.
I do think it's crazy that in this country we know what works and we just decide to ignore it. Because I think in the book earlier it talked about Brazil and how they had huge drug numbers as well, but they chose to work on prevention instead of criminalizing people. And
Mm.
we know that. I mean, we know what works, but we just, like you said, for money and power reasons, we choose to ignore it. And also, like you said, I don't know if there's a larger conspiracy, but they know who's in jail. They know the numbers. You know, there's an awareness that has to be there because we know it. And
Right.
so, you know, there is a lot that, you know, needs to be done in this country. So like I said, I think the awakening is maybe the first beginning of the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just money and power, because if it was that, then they'd be locking up these people who are hooked on these opioids.
Right.
Right.
It's also
Right.
you have to put race in there too.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
you
what
gotta-
they know who it is. So they know who's in jail. So that's what I'm saying. There's a knowledge when we were saying before, maybe, you know, there's not a conspiracy going on. I'm like, well, there has to be because we're aware of who's in jail. So
Right.
they're aware of it. So yeah, it's not just money and power at all. They know they're criminalizing a certain segment of the population.
Well,
Right.
it's why they don't want better training for police officers.
Right.
Because there are a lot of police officers that don't know that their training is in direct conflict with the illegal search and seizure, Fourth Amendment stuff. They don't know that. They don't understand that when they're yelling at somebody with their hand on their firearm, will you please spread your legs and touch the wall? And then they are
Right.
trained to use that tone of voice.
Right.
Where that this hot word compliance comes in.
Right.
Mhm.
You comply, then it's consent. And see, as long as we can keep cops thinking that their training is meant to keep them safe, thinking that their training is right, then all these people that are in power that want to build a system based on essentially what amounts to slavery, because it means more money for them, it means
Mhm.
more power for them,
Mhm.
then they're going to keep it that way. And on top of that, as long as people don't know that compliance is consent, because I didn't know that.
Mm.
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't know that I had an option, because when I'm pulled over by a police officer, I don't know why if I don't know why they're pulling me over, then I stop and they tell me why they pulled me over. And I don't know anyone who has had a bad experience with cops when you're, held to the ground and searched and frisked because some Supreme Court justice said that was okay, that you're going to say, oh, well, obviously it's safe to tell them no.
Right.
Who is that reasonable person that thinks that it's safe to tell an armed person no?
Right. Mhm.
And it's not.
So-
pull you over on the
It's not
side
safe.
in some, on the side of the road where there's no people around, you better do what they say. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
Especially if
right.
you're black, like there's just no way that you can.
Well, they're gonna turn off that camera.
Right, and they're gonna do what they want, and
Right.
and they have that authority, and
Guns.
they have
And-
guns. I mean,
And they
we have-
think it's right because of how they've been trained and the poison that's in our society that says that, oh, it's not racism, it's just fact. Like there is this poison in our society that says it's the poison of racism. And it says, oh, well, anyone different than me is inherently dangerous. But see, as long as you don't label it anyone who is black,
Mhm.
then it's not racism. It's just the way we're made. And that's something that you're fed as a white person, especially in the South. I can't say what it's like to live anywhere other than Griffin, Georgia, because I've lived here my whole life. But I will say that it was absolutely fed to me from a very young age that Black people and Black men in particular are dangerous.
We touched on that. We actually touched on that in White Fragility, where she flat out said that white police officers do not have any business policing Black people because there's their implicit bias. They're always going to look at them as dangerous. And it's like, well, damn it, the majority of the police force is white, like what do you do with that? But you're completely right. And she touched on that a lot.
It's common sense. Imagine if in the suburbs, 90% of the officers were black.
Right.
They would never call the police.
Right.
Right. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, the police officer should be a reflection of the community. And, I always used to comment and say, I've never had the experience where the officer came and helped me with something.
No.
You have an issue, they take their time, and we had, and there's this idea of you can't go against them. Something as little as being at the airport and having our flight canceled. And Shagan getting a little upset and raising his voice. And immediately it was security. You know what I mean? As soon as he said, this is some bullshit, it was like security. And then it was another security guard. So now it's two, and then it's, you can't use profanity. Now that's illegal. You can't be upset and you need to calm down. And he was like, oh, I know, what that means.
Right.
When they say you need to calm down.
I've gotten to be, I have to be very cognizant because I kind of was adjusting my whole attitude, when the whole situation happened with Sandra Bland, because I could have been her on a couple of occasions, because I've been pulled over and before the cop could even get to my window, I had an attitude because I know I didn't do anything wrong. And, it's just like, really, what do you want? And I know what my rights are, and I would antagonize and aggravate them just because I knew when they tried me and tried to make it seem like they knew more than me. Like, I'm only cracking my window this much just to send my driver's license through and my registration. That's all you're getting. You're not trying to lean over into my car to get a whiff of what's in here, even though there's nothing. I'm just being honest, because you only have to open it that much to slide your license and registration through. So don't ask me where I'm coming from or where I'm going. That has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't have anything to do with the cost of tea in China. That's none of your business. Just give me my ticket so I can go, if that's what you're doing. All this other stuff is irrelevant. So I had to be cognizant of that, because like, dang, it'd be just my luck if I end up in the back of the damn police car and I'm not alive the next day, just because I was exercising my right not
I mean, that's one of the few videos that I did watch with Sandra Bland, and it was very disturbing, but it reinforced to me why whenever I get a ticket, I am extremely compliant. Good afternoon, officer, and yes, and you know what I mean, because you feel that fear that you can't. I mean, I got pulled over once for. It was that pulled me over, and in my mind, I'm like, what did I do? Right? I can't think of what I've done wrong. So I'm like, what is this about? He comes to the window and goes, of course I would go, do you know why I pulled you over? I'm like, no. He's like, because you were looking at your cell phone. And there's a new rule now, a new law it was like January 4th. He was like, there's a law that was passed. Did you know there was a new law that was passed on January 1st that said you can't look down on your cell phone, even if you don't have it in your hand? If I can tell that you're looking down, I can stop you. And I was like, I looked at him like, I mean, just give me my ticket. Just give me my ticket, dude. But I've had friends, you know, that are white that are like, oh my God, I got pulled over. And he was like, I just started crying and I was like, oh my God. And he let me go. And I'm like, that has never.
I have never gotten let go.
Your accent is wrong.
You got black tendencies.
I have never gotten let go.
I've been let go.
Never got let go either.
It's weird.
I
I've
pulled
been
over
let
once
go.
with my brother, and the cops wanted to search the car. So they asked us to get out of the car. And then he was like, okay, I'm just going to ask you to put your hands behind your back. So I was like, okay.
I'm going to ask you. That was very important. Ask.
So I put my hands behind my back, and then he put my hand in some kind of lock and started to break my finger, right? And just as a reaction, I broke free. Right there, you're dead.
Right.
Right.
So you're resisting or attacking
Yeah.
or whatever.
If I didn't break into the Pointer Sister card and the UFC, and you know, we grew up in this neighborhood, it would have been a wrap.
Right.
And it's crazy because in the book she was like, as long as you give consent, the police can stop you, interrogate you. And when I saw that, I said, you know, if you don't give consent, it turns violent anyway. So, and then I was thinking about traffic stops, and she started mentioning that and later, and I was like, and I thought of Sandra Bland, and I thought of they were talking about the amendments not being upheld, and I was thinking about I think it was Philando Castile, one of the stops where he was a registered NRA member, and he informed them beforehand he had the gun.
Oh gosh, that one, I saw that one too. That one was rough.
Yeah, and I was like, even if you comply with the law, they're gonna change the law so it doesn't apply to you. That doesn't make any sense.
If you do comply, you can die. If you don't comply, you can die. So,
right.
I mean, it's the reality.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Or if you make them feel uncomfortable in any way.
Yeah.
Or if they just are ready to pop off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the laws that we have let pass and the laws that are, you know, infringing on our, you know, on our rights have emboldened the police. And there's a culture now within the police that is, we are superior beings. They are superior to everyone. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they can talk to you any kind of way from the start. They can be disrespectful. They could, you know, call you names. They could do whatever, but you can't do that to them.
Right.
How does it work like that? How is that okay? But since we've passed all these laws, they're letting them search, they're letting them do all this stuff that is totally against our rights. But I think that has helped to create that culture within the police. You know, we have to take down some of these laws and make it more stringent for them so that they don't feel like they can do whatever, like the ends justifies the means. I'm going to search you illegally, but I found something, so it doesn't matter that I searched you illegally.
Right.
No, it's not supposed to work like that. It's not supposed to work like that, because once you start doing that, then you are introducing the chance that they could even plant something. And that has happened. There was a whole big old trial and case about it in Oakland. There was a group of police officers that were planting drugs on suspects. And that's not you think that's happening there only? It's happening in a lot of places.
Everywhere, yeah. And you know, I was alarmed when these people were so gung-ho about Kemp and, you know, pushing for this gang affiliation stuff, when it showed that gang violence was on the decline. But it was also in LA where they were putting people into these gang databases that had nothing to do.
Right.
Or
that was another one that came out. Yeah.
Like, other than I don't like you, other than you got an attitude with me when I pulled you over. And I think that's the situation that's in Georgia as well. A lot of these people are being put into the system as gang affiliates, and it's not even true. It's not true.
Mm.
So yeah, this stuff is very
And
dangerous.
yeah, yeah, that that's ridiculous to me. And then the pipe, because of course all that falls under the pipeline tactics. I didn't even know that was still a thing. I thought they would have gotten rid of that by now. That kind of training, which is what all of that is, and it's just like, and I'm reading their like drug courier profiles, or basically they use it for anything. But I was just
Anything.
looking at that
That
like,
was crazy. That drug courier profile. It was everything
yeah,
and anything on there. There was no profile. It was just whatever, whatever. You can pick any of these hundreds of reasons why that
Uh-huh.
person could be the one. There was
Right.
nothing.
when it said when it said driving with mismatched occupants, I wondered where that was going. I was like,
Mismatched occupants
One black,
yeah,
one white.
White, black. What's
because
that
they
mean?
couldn't possibly be just friends. They couldn't. They're on a mission.
Mac occupant.
They're on a mission.
yeah.
No
Yeah,
way.
that was the reason that you could pull somebody over, along with oh, it was crazy. A reason that you could, reasonably search somebody or pull them over or do whatever. There was like, if you were traveling with luggage, like to pick out drug,
Ah, right.
traveling with luggage, traveling without luggage, driving an expensive car, driving a
Yeah.
car that needs repair, driving with out of state license plate, driving a rental car, driving with mismatched occupants, acting too calm, acting too nervous, dressing casually, wearing expensive clothing. I was like, what?
Oh,
Oh, like did you
Any
know?
oh, wow.
reason, any
It
reason
was
at all.
anything, anything.
And then on the, if you look at it in a detached way, I mean, it's like, okay, well, if there's a big drug problem, it does make some sense that if cars have out of state plates, they might be more likely, if they're doing something suspicious, to be up to something, right? They have an out of state plate, or if they've got all this luggage in the back, because they made that big movie. Was Johnny Depp in it? Blow?
Mm.
Blow. Did you guys see that movie Blow, when they were
Oh,
carrying the
yeah.
drugs on the planes, right?
Right.
But then it's like that's how they're doing it, not in these little trucks and these
Right.
pickups.
But they got it on here too. It was like, if you were the first to,
They
if you were the
bringing
first
in some stuff. They bringing in some weight from somewhere on a
Oh,
boat or a
yeah,
plane,
Right.
oh,
but they got
not
it
in the
in there
back of
too.
the Impala.
They was like, if you were the first to the plane, the last to the plane, if you were in the middle to the plane, they could stop
Uh-uh.
you for that reason. I was like, what? Paying for a ticket in cash, and it just kept going. And I'm just
Oh
like,
wow,
this is just living at
wow.
at some point. These are just living. But then again, black people get killed for living all the time, so I guess you can get stopped for it too. I, but yeah, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Reasons. I'm honestly shocked that they're still in force today, but um, I didn't understand why the police were doing it either until she kept going in the next few sections talking about the incentives,
Mm.
where the federal incentives, the military didn't even know that was legal to give away military intelligence and equipment and stuff to civilians. And I was thinking, well, isn't there something prohibiting you from using using military equipment in civilian areas? But that law didn't come along until later, and I can't
Mm.
remember what page I notated that on. But and so I realized it really was kind of just chaos, where people could, the SWAT teams that grew. I mean, it was ridiculously crazy. And there were a lot of, like they said, court cases and stuff, examples that happened with the SWAT teams.
Mm.
What court cases kind of stood out to y'all the most, or did any stand out to you?
Page 95,
Uh.
where it says drug raids conducted by SWAT teams are not polite encounters in countless situations in which police could easily have arrested someone or conducted a search without a military style raid. Police blast into people's homes, typically in the middle of the night, throwing grenades, shouting, and pointing guns and rifles at anyone inside, often including young children. In recent years,
Mm.
dozens of people have been killed by police in the course of these raids, including elderly grandparents and those who are completely innocent of any crime. Brianna,
Yep.
Yeah.
um, I also thought about the elderly woman in Atlanta. The night, I think she was like 93 years old when they,
Uh,
burst into
Right.
her home, and
Hmm.
she ended up being
uh,
riddled with bullets. Like,
Oh,
Too
wow.
many people. The baby, they threw the flash grenade through the window and it landed in the crib,
Oh, goodness.
gave him severe, was it like second and third degree burns? I mean, countless situations that you can point
Yeah.
to where this has been a reality for people. Just
Were they charged in those cases?
no.
Wow.
Is
Were
that
they
because there
charged?
was someone that was up to something in the situation and so they justified it, or just no charges?
Yeah, when we talk about immunity,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that comes in at.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but you'll charge them for what? Wanting abandonment or something. It was for Brianna's white neighbors. But
Right, the bullets that didn't hit her that went into the neighbor's house. Yeah.
oh
They got,
wow.
They got charged for the bullets that didn't hit her and went into the neighbor's house.
but not for the ones that hit her.
No.
And not for they didn't get charged for the ones for the black people apartments that went into. They say just the white people's apartment.
Oh no. That's cold.
That's what I read. So I was like, I mean, it's right there in y'all face. Y'all just gonna uphold this right now? That's fine.
So blatant.
Yeah, they're above the
You know,
law.
I think
Yeah,
I
they
think
are
part of a major problem is that the majority of white people don't have these encounters with the police, and it doesn't affect them, so they don't care because it doesn't affect them, and they think that if you have any association with anyone who has any kind of criminal background or history, that it's guilt by association. So you've done something to deserve this to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And until it happens to them or a family member or something like that, they're not going to care.
Right.
Right.
But I've never had those kind of encounters. Most of the time I get stopped by the police. Sometimes I get a ticket, sometimes they let me off. I've never had bad experiences with police. And I still know what the difference between right and wrong is between human beings. Like I can't excuse. I did it at first with the police reform when they were saying defund the police and all that, and I was like, you know, looking at it from don't defund the police. They have an implicit bias that's there because we all have it because it's what's been pushed into our minds. If you had an American education, these stereotypes, but it's just been underlying. But there comes a point, and I'm like, well, they should just try to, change. I think we're talking about another book, change their mentality about it. Well, recognize it like white fragility and change it. But the thing is, like y'all said, they don't want it to change. It's just too lucrative for them not to. And I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand why the Supreme Court was so adamant about this. And I keep wondering, were the jails paying off the justices or something? Like what is going on there? Because if the state courts would relinquish, like, let up a little bit, but then the Supreme Court would come down and say no. So is somebody in their pocket? Like, are they in somebody? What's going on with that?
I mean, could be. We had a whole situation. Sandra and Monique and DeAndre. I know y'all probably remember the situation with the judge and ZSI. Like the judge's family is in charge of the dang on probation office. Like, what is more incentive you need to put people on probation than the family owns the damn probation company? So I'm pretty sure there are some situations where someone is receiving some kind of kickback. There was another incident with a judge that was getting that type of kickback with sending people to this particular prison that he was tied to. So I'm sure there are those types of situations and relationships that they have.
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised. And I think, again, that goes back to your point too, Jessica, when you were saying, you were just now kind of understanding the fight over the Supreme Court justice, and why that's such an important thing is because it affects things for decades.
Right.
So that's why they're going for younger and younger justices, like this current, that's one that they want to nominate, or that has been nominated. She's 47, 48 years old. So she has potentially 30, 40 years in this role until
Mhm.
she drops dead, to make these conservative views. And, so I wouldn't be surprised if like, Yashanda was saying there's a network of things going on.
What's sad though is that they're not supposed to let their own personal opinions come into play. So it shouldn't really matter in the grand scheme who's nominated or who's going to be on the Supreme Court, because their opinion shouldn't matter. But obviously opinions do matter. And that affects every kind of, affects law enforcement, affects the justice system. Everybody's opinion deep down inside is what's coming out. And that's what they're pushing for. And that's why we're worried about this justice, because of her, whatever her views are, which her views should not matter. It should be just the law. But that's not how it is, and that's why we're so worried about it. But her opinion should not matter. But I don't think people can separate the two.
Yeah, they're supposed to be fair and impartial, right?
Mhm.
That's the
Right.
whole thing with the judge. They're supposed to not have bias, or to the extent that they can. They're not supposed to have bias. They're supposed to be fair and impartial, but they're trying. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about her. I heard enough that made me just say I really don't.
Mm-mm.
I don't
No,
wanna
if
know
she can,
details.
say that the N word does not make your workplace a hostile environment when she has 2 adopted Black kids.
Right. That's what I was saying.
No.
It's scary.
No.
I know that's just a
Scary.
lot.
I,
That's
as a
lot.
white person, I would be uncomfortable and have been in a situation where somebody used the N-word in my presence and shocked the hell out of me, and I had to say something in a
Right.
completely white environment.
I couldn't believe she
It makes
said that.
it makes me uncomfortable. Why should I have to listen to that? And how she could say that, and she's
Right.
supposed to be so Catholic,
Right.
so Christian.
Right.
Come on.
But like you said,
If
above all
somebody-
of that, right, she took time to adopt 2 kids from Haiti. And you
Oh.
actually have that viewpoint. Just I can't even comprehend having that viewpoint.
Right.
It goes to show you that she has no clue, and no, she doesn't. She has no clue
Mhm.
of how that will affect a Black person. It's like if somebody was calling you the B word every day at work, wouldn't that make it a hostile environment? And that's not even on the same level, because some
Right.
people use it as a term of endearment.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
just
And for
saying.
those of us that don't, they would still have to have hands laid on them.
It just shows she doesn't have the empathy. She cannot connect or understand in any way how it will affect people. And to think that she is going to be on the Supreme Court is scary. It's
I
very
know.
scary.
It
Very
is
scary.
scary. It is scary. I don't know what their end goal is with all this. That's what scares me.
Well, to me, the end goal, I mean, yeah, it's starting off right now. It's definitely the whole everything, the prison industrial complex, everything is racially motivated, and it's going, there. She's right with the book. She's right. It is the new Jim Crow. But
Right.
trust me, if it continues down this road, poor white people are going to surprise to find themselves down in that caste too eventually, because that's
Right.
where it's going. It won't stop at just, because eventually you're going to have all the poor Black people in that,
Right.
in that situation. You're going to have to find new people, and it's going to be the other poor people, regardless of your race, that you're going to find yourself there. So then it'll end up being like what they left from England to come here to try to do. It's going to be the royal people, and then you got the serfs who
Right.
don't have nothing, don't own nothing, and can't
Right.
own anything. And if it continues down this road,
Right.
it will be like that.
Yeah, and I remember people talking about that. I don't know if it was 20 or 10 or however many years ago, about the middle class shrinking and the
Oh,
fact that
yes.
it's disappearing. And I remember kind of being like, oh, I don't think it's going to totally shrink and go away. We're all
Oh,
right.
yes.
know.
No.
And you just see it now. When I'm in America, I see it with the cost of things. I'm just
Yes.
always like, wow, the
Right.
cost of living in terms of
Yes.
just to be overseas. you know, you always can kind of, I still do have to say that overseas, sometimes a lot of times that basic living expense is more manageable for people. And I think, you
Right.
know, when you look at the number of homeless people in some place like Los Angeles, now I guess they're just putting up tents on the street.
Oh,
And this is not a black issue. This is black, white, Hispanic, old, disabled, veterans, like the whole thing, you know, is the homeless population, because people can't afford rent. And if you hit any kind of hiccup in your life, whatever color you are, you know, you're going to find yourself in that group. And then that's where the police and the criminal, you know, you're loitering, or you can't be here, or you know, so now you find yourself in jail.
Right.
You know, and
No,
it's
that,
like a cycle of
very
how do you get
valid.
out of that when there's
Very
no
valid.
foundation set up for people to just have, you know, I mean, you have got people living in 25-30 million dollar homes up on a hill, and you drive down the hill 10 minutes away and there's a whole underpass with people with shopping carts and tents sitting there on the ground, you know, wondering what's next. I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
but
it's so sad. It's so
it's
sad.
true. But you know what even brought that even more to the light was the way the Trump administration handled this whole pandemic, you know, with New York Times just coming out with the figure that 80 million people have slipped into poverty since May. So when you
Ooh,
think about the people
slip.
that were already at that level and utilizing any type of funding that they could, then you add 8 more million people on, you know, top of that, and essentially you're running out of resources to help these people, just like with the food banks that
Right.
had lines, you know, all the way to the highway. Foundations not having enough money to be able to help people.
Right.
You know, these
Right.
are very real world situations that are happening right now, you know.
Right.
So do you think this would be the time for us to try, well, we should have, try to get on the ballot reforms for maybe pulling all that money that got flooded into the drug war, pulling that and redirecting it where it's supposed to have gone and putting it into other programs and stuff like that? Do you
Right. And
think
that's where the whole
Mm.
defunding the police movement came into play, is because they were saying that the money that they're giving them in order to militarize the police needs to be spent in the community with community
Right.
programs that are going to actually help people, you know, so that, hey, that's essentially what they've been talking about.
Yeah.
I mean,
And see,
it
because
comes
when
to
people
me
say
down to
defund
the
the
core of the politicians and the people in power caring about the people. You know, that's my whole thing. I mean, whether it's, you know, Biden talking or Kamala or Trump and Pence, at some point, a lot of it is rhetoric on both sides. They
Right.
always say the same things every 4 years. And that's why I can't get excited, because it's always taxes. We're going to lower the taxes. We've got a plan. We're going to, you know, whatever they, you know, we're going to hit this coronavirus. We're going to shut it down. You know, whatever the little buzzwords and the keywords are, where it's like, clearly, what's the war budget? You know, what country are we raping right now? You know,
Right.
and could we funnel that into, you know, like better education, higher salaries for teacher, housing for homeless? I mean, they have warehouses where they could set up some kind of work to stay thing on a massive scale to get people off the street if they cared
Right.
about it.
They really did.
Or mental
Just-
health issues, having psychologists be paid or whatever to come volunteer or help diagnose people who might need some kind of drug treatment to help them level out, because you see that on the street too.
Right.
And that's
Oh, yeah.
crime. Somebody popping off because they're seeing Stella behind them and she's not really there.
Right. You know, that's the other thing, is that what happens is this is the energy that comes, as you said, every 4 years. But the problem is that we have short attention spans and we get complacent and we don't hold them accountable for the things that they said they were going to do. So
Right.
instead of us just getting them into office, it means we need to be on them every single day. But of course, that doesn't happen. You know, nobody's calling, nobody's emailing, nobody's standing outside of the White House saying, hey,
Right.
we forgot about what you said. And that's why it continues to be a cycle. And that's not even just with, you know, Congress, that's with local government and state government.
Right. Every
We don't
level.
hold
Right.
them, we don't hold them accountable once they get in there.
Right.
It's a lot of work, isn't it? I mean, they need to make it easier.
He said it's a lot of work.
It is like all of this, the voting, the bills that are coming up, we need quick access online to be able to change policy a lot more easy than
Well,
Right.
and it's
working so
also
hard. They don't have time to follow all these bills and everything. You could barely survive.
true. And it's also about us not understanding things either, because
Yeah.
when they were talking about defunding the police, I thought they meant just take all the money away from the police. I like their salaries and everything else too, but that's not really what they were talking about. And even still, you got to make it. They got to put it to a level where people who work even at McDonald's can know about it and care about it and understand what's going on. Because when you use this big legal language, when you use the
Right.
rhetoric from politicians, nobody knows what's really happening. They just vote for whatever, if they vote at all, and they're just like, oh, it don't really matter because this and this and that, but it matters. But we just have to
I would
understand.
say, I agree with that too. If they could make the bill information and things coming up easier to
easier.
find out with the internet age now. With
And
the
this
age of
electoral
Right.
college is go.
this electoral college has got to go. That makes
Yeah.
me feel like it's not democracy.
It's not. With 40, all those people in California, you get one vote.
Right.
These little bitty states
right.
have all this power. That don't make no sense. Mm-mm.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Right. Delaware. It's like, how many people are there?
It's getting so bad. Remember when water was free?
We were in Houston. I was like $5 for the smart water,
I know,
like
right?
$4 for this one. It was just like you bought like 3 things, and it was like that'll be $12.80. I was like, wait a minute, what? Water used to be free.
It's crazy.
We can get a big jug here. They raised the price here this year. It's 12 star now, I think.
Not like
That
$4.
Yeah,
That's pretty cheap.
that's pretty cheap for that big jug.
But the average American doesn't know how different it is in other countries, because we've made ourselves believe that we are the greatest country in the world. And so yeah,
Right?
and that's what they push all the time, like we're the greatest ones. We can determine. That's why we go into all these other countries. They're not doing things right, so let's go over there and show them how it's done.
No,
You know what I mean? But we're not taking care of our own.
Right.
And we're imprisoning all these people, and even when they get out, they still are in prison because they don't have the access to the programs that they really need. How are you going to just hold somebody in jail for 5 years, let them out to what?
Right.
They can't have any contact with anybody who's possibly a felon. So what if
all their friends are gone?
Right. Okay, so they probably can't go back to where they lived before. So where are they going to go? They don't have access to housing. They can't vote. I mean, what's the whole point of that? Except to keep them, in that state. It's just, but the average American doesn't know how it is in other countries. I was downright mad when I came back to the US last year after visiting my family in Sicily, and my cousin sent me to the store to get bread, and she was like, oh, go get 4 loaves of bread. And she gave me $1, like the equivalent of our dollar. And I was like, in some coins. And I was like, this isn't enough. I said, you got me going here, and these people are going to look at me crazy. She said, that's enough. Just tell them what you want. And I was mad, and it was enough. And so when I got back to the US, I was at the grocery store just mad. And I started taking pictures of the prices of everything and sending the pictures back to my cousin in Italy, because everybody, they think America is so great. They think America is so great. They have no idea. They have
they
no
really
idea.
love California. If you say California, they're like, oh, California.
Right.
You can't afford to live there, though.
Right.
Right.
Oh, you better have a darn good job.
Right.
I mean, you
I
better
said
have
that. I've always said that everyone thinks America is the greatest country in the world until they leave America. And then they realize it's not the case.
Yeah, I've never left, but I know that ain't the case.
It could be one of the greatest. I mean, I'm kind of out of the mindset of needing to be the best, but it could be a really great country because, like I said, I think what we have working for us is that diversity. Is the fact that you can go get some bomb Korean food somewhere. You can go get some Japanese. You can go get a bomb taco down the hill. That's just one example of culture, but I like all of that, and I feel like there's so much wealth But it's like, can't you guys would just carve off a little bit of the 28 million that you made? Maybe just give 1 million away, or I guess there are people that are doing that, but it seems like it shouldn't be so hard like they're making it, unless there's this really strong motivation for greed and power that's just superseding the need to care about basic humanity.
Yeah.
And people have just because not everybody, I don't believe everybody has equal ability, and I don't believe everybody has equal talent. So I'm not a socialist in the sense where I want everything to be like, gray. But it's like everybody that's trying, or that's just kind of not just loose, should have access to food and water and shelter and clothing if they're trying to be a functioning citizen. That doesn't seem like too much to ask. And we should have an attitude of, I feel like even with the elderly, I hate this talk that I hear, especially probably because I'm getting older. When women get older, she's a this, or now she's, going through menopause. She's a da-da-da-da. There's this whole attitude toward the elderly and getting older, like you're washed up and you're of no use anymore. You know what I mean? Instead of this attitude of wanting to care about our elderly, and having respect for them for having reached a certain point and wanting to make sure that they're cool,
Yeah. And well, I was gonna say, America could be greater, but if it wasn't for, so like when it comes to like the bad deal section she was talking about, and further how prosecutors were given basically greater power than the judges at that point, because you had the federally mandated sentences where maybe one drug offense is like 5 to 10 years, and it just kept going up. And prosecutors were giving people like they routinely charge. He said prosecutors admit they routinely charge people with crimes for which they technically have probable cause, but which they seriously doubt they could ever win in court. They load up defendants with charges that carry extremely harsh sentences in order to force them to plead guilty to lesser offenses, and here's the kicker: to obtain testimony for a related case. Harsh sentencing laws encourage people to snitch. So it's not just federal, it's judges and federal law and everything. So now it's down to the prosecutors trying to basically like the 2 strikes or whatever. You're putting 2 counts on somebody for something, so that when they come out and they get locked up, one more count, they're in for life. And honestly, I felt like the prosecutors had a great burden. Had something. Is it a burden? I'm trying to say. They had the power to help more than hurt, and they decided to hurt, whether it was for conviction rates or whatever it was. I don't know, but I think they also played a lot into the Jim Crow system by creating it, because you're tearing communities apart you're tearing the unity of people of color apart by trying to convince them to turn against each other. And then you're locking up, males, and for the most part or whatever, you're locking up people, you put them on parole and they get out, they've been in jail for 10 years, they don't know what to do, they're going to get locked back up. And so you're taking people away from families, you're taking men away from their kids. Right. So you're really just helping perpetuate that new Jim Crow. And it's like, America could really be great, but you lock up some of your greatest minds and throw away the key. You don't know where we could be at this point, but you were just so worried about your money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What did y'all think about those next few sections about that? Well, that next
section. I think in that case, like the prosecutor is essentially God in the judicial system. Because of having that power to throw the book at someone, or choosing to lessen their charges based on giving them a plea deal. And I also agree with what you said about some of the greatest minds are locked up. Like you have, and I hate to say this, but people, if they could focus their energy and it was more of a rehabilitative system, then things would look a lot different. Because if you think about you got a drug dealer, well, this is somebody who knows logistics, they know accounting, they have that whole business mindset because they're essentially running an illegal business. But if you could give them something to focus on, with positive energy for something that's along the legal avenue, that would be completely different, but it's not rehabilitative. And that's also a problem when we talk about the differences in systems here and in the United States. But you know, the other thing that it reminds me of is if ever any of you have ever seen A Clockwork Orange, the movie A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick, and he talks about crime in the midst of punishment only leads to concentrated criminality, because you're putting people in a situation where the majority of them are criminals. They're just figuring out how to become better criminals for when they are released. You know,
Right.
so there's that situation as well.
The whole prosecutor, the prosecutor, it all needs to be changed, because they're getting their promotions, their raises, they're moving up based on convictions, not on administering justice.
Right.
So even in cases where they later find out that that person is innocent, they're fighting against it, because then that's going to change their conviction rating. That should not come into play. It shouldn't be about the amount of convictions you get is how you're going to move up. It should be about how you've handled justice, how justice has been done, how even if, you know, how you found even somebody you were prosecuting, you found them to be innocent and you stopped trying to prosecute them at that point.
Right.
And because you found them to be innocent, but they don't want to let it go. Being tied in with their conviction rate that's just, it goes in the wrong direction. It's not making the whole point of it all for guilty people to go to jail. It's just to convict people and send them to jail. So that also, I think, is helping with the new Jim Crow. It's helping people, it's helping to get more people in jail. And even sometimes when they are found innocent and they get out, they're getting out, I forgot what it's called, on something that says they're not saying they're innocent, they're just letting them out. So they still have that conviction on their record, even after they were let out because they were innocent. So that's those people, you know, imprisoned as well.
Right.
Because even if you say you got out, you know, on parole or you're on probation, you can go back. So it's if they let you satisfy your whole sentence. So you were in jail 5 years. So when you get out, you're not on parole or anything. You've done your sentence. So you get out and you do whatever. If you get caught doing something else, then that's a whole new case or whatever. But say you get a 5-year sentence and you're let out early on parole or probation, any little thing you do is going to put you back in. You don't change your address. And they find out, you're going back. You don't change your address. You're going back.
Any minor infraction, huh?
Any minor thing, any type of interaction with police, you're going back. And then they can extend it. What you had was a 5-year sentence. Now you got a 10-year sentence. So they've kept you in there even longer. But the prosecutors, the power of the prosecutor, that needs to change. The way that they're incentivized needs to change, because
and
that's not
DAs too, right? Aren't the DAs by vote or something? Elected
district attorney?
Yeah.
And they're going by their conviction rating. Oh, I have a 99% conviction rating. Really?
Right.
I wonder how many of those people are innocent. You know, and they are stacking charges.
Like, I've been watching my true crime documentaries on Netflix, and
Sad.
it's sad.
It is.
How they do.
It is. But the fact that they can stack on charges that are not there, you know, they've got they're adding on all these additional charges to scare you. So you take this lesser plea bargain, which is still not a good deal, but you got to take it, because if you don't, they've added all these things on their terrorist threats and kidnapping, and you know what I mean? Just you were in a domestic disturbance with your girlfriend or whatever, and now all of a sudden it's turned into attempted murder. Something like that. So you're going to plea so that you don't have to face that charge because you're scared that you won't win.
Right.
I mean, that's how they get people that are innocent to plead guilty, because if they don't plead guilty and it actually does go to trial, if they don't win, they're facing 30 years instead of taking this 10-year sentence. That's not right. That's not right.
It's not. It's like the system is designed to get as much time as they can out of you, I guess, because it's privatized. A lot of the prisons
Free
now.
labor.
Some of them.
I don't know. Were they doing that before it was privatized? I don't know.
I think they were. Huh? Yeah, they were. Drive and do the meeting. This girl is multitasking.
When they basically started setting up these
busy, the girl, you busy, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I know it's about time to leave. So, anybody got any last thoughts on this chapter?
Depressing.
Yeah.
That's my last thought. Depressing.
Anger inducing, so I definitely understand.
Yeah, I don't like all those stats. It is a little bit disheartening.
Yeah, it wasn't the stats so much for me as the individual cases I was hearing about that she was talking about, and I was like, even a 14-year-old, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, awesome. Anybody else? Well,
all right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jessica. You did great.
Sure. Thanks.